Alright guys, welcome back to our channel, and today I'm answering a question which I get at least twice a week. People phoning me or messaging me saying, I've bought this new reel and I keep on casting wind knots with it. What's wrong? What's wrong with the reel? What am I doing wrong? So obviously when we started fishing with braid, we all went through this exercise, casting wind knots, backing with wind knots, trying for hours to undo wind knots. But I think I've sort of come to the bottom of it when it comes to the pen gear as to the reasons why we get wind knots on it. So I'm going to explain to you guys what I do to prevent wind knots and how I set up my braid on my reel in order not to get wind knots when I cast. Alright, so for me there's two main reasons for getting wind knots when you cast. Maybe a third one which I'll mention, but two main reasons. So the first reason on the pen reel specifically for creating wind knots is overfilling your spool. And I keep on telling guys when they buy the new reel, do not overfill the spool. There's a mark on the spool which I'll show you guys. That is sort of the maximum you want to fill your spool. As soon as you start going over that mark on the spool, which is put there for a reason to show you where to stop filling the braid, you're going to get wind knots. It's just the way the reels are designed. They're not designed to overfill. So as soon as you overfill them, you're definitely going to get wind knots. So that is my first tip. Follow the line on the spool, which I'll show you guys just now. Cut your line off there. It might not look right. It might look like you can add another 30 or 40 yards, but just don't do it, because that's where you're going to get your wind knot. So that's the first reason. The second reason is your line lay. Now, when you've been fishing with a reel a bit and those little washers that determine the height of your spool starts wearing, you often get your line lay changing on the spool. So you might get your line lay filling at the bottom of the spool, or overfilling at the top and underfilling at the bottom, or overfilling on the bottom of the spool and underfilling at the top. Now when you see that and it's an uneven lay on your spool when you look from the side like this, so here's a good example. I've got this reel here which I've overfilled on purpose to show you guys how quick I'm going to get a wind knot. And then also, if you can see, the line lay here is not correct. So what this tells me is I'm overfilling at the bottom, underfilling at the top. So I need to remove one of these washers, these spacer washers in the spool here, and then play around with a bit, wind braid on, and as soon as it's 100% level, it's correct. So as you use the reel, those washers wear out, and every now and then you've got to play around with them, put a different size washer in. They come in the box with the reel, and make sure that is 100% level over there, because just that line being uneven will also create a wind knot. So those are the two main factors concerning the reel that would create wind knots when you fish with it. So my third factor which I found that creates wind knots is on a windy day like today, when you're actually casting into the wind and or winding in your, if I'm throwing a spoon for instance like this, I'm winding it in and there's a side wash, so the water is actually pushing the spoon towards me and I haven't got tension on my spoon, so I'm picking up a lot of slack, and that slack line on the spool can also create a wind knot when you cast. So on windy days, when I'm winding in, I'll always grab my braid with my finger and keep a bit of tension on it, obviously not to cut my finger, just enough tension so the braid goes onto my spool nice and tight. So it's not loose, because it's normally on windy, miserable days that I find that I wind it on loose, because there's other factors determining how the braid sets onto the reel. So guys, those are the 3 points which I want to highlight to you guys, which I have found creates wind knots for me. And so how do you solve the problem when you're fishing and it's a bit overfilled? I normally just, if I cast, especially when I fill the reel and I think it's full enough, and my first or second cast or third cast I get a wind knot, I just cut that braid off there, lose that 10 meters. Don't try and undo that little wind knot and wind it on again, because you're going to get it again. So just pull off 20 meters. It's not going to make any difference on your cast. Retie a lure on and fish again. That'll save you hours of heartache and pain. Believe me, I've tried that and I've just learned. Cut it off where the wind knot is. Take off another 10 meters if you want to, just to make sure you're not going to get another wind knot, because it affects your fishing. You're wasting time while the fish could have been biting, and you're also frustrating yourself. Alright guys, so I've overfilled this one, and just as an exercise, I'm going to make a few casts and show you guys how quickly you will get a wind knot if everything is not correct. So I've got a wrong line lay on the reel as well as an overfilled spool here. Alright guys, so let's take our overfilled reel, make a few casts and see what happens. Alright, so we're good for the first cast. Let's do another one. Oh, there, I felt it go through. So just like that, on our second cast, we got a wind knot, and I want to see now where it is compared to how much braid I've got on the reel. You can see it coming. And there we go. So that wind knot was 99.9% because of overfilling the reel. So I'm going to show you guys a spool here. It's still definitely overfilled. So I know for a fact, if I just cut it off here at this wind knot, I'm going to get another wind knot. So I'm going to take off some braid now and show you which is the correct level to have it. And then we'll make a whole bunch of casts, which I'm sure I won't get a wind knot, just to confirm my theory. So unclip the bail arm. I'm not going to throw this braid on the beach, I'll take it home with me. So, and I'm just going to take a whole bunch off. Alright, so I've got this bundle of braid which I took off, and I'm just going to cut it all off and retie my lure on. Alright guys, so let me show you on the spool and try and explain to you if you can see the mark on the spool, which I use as a guideline, and which you should use as a guideline when you're filling your reel. Alright guys, so as you can see, I've taken off braid up to that where that black mark ends. So most of the Penn spools have got this mark on it, and that is your guide. So I would say that is almost a millimeter from the top of the spool in, and then I've taken off a little bit more just for insurance. So in total, I would say that is a millimeter gap. Alright, so that's how I spool all my reels. And often guys say to me, but if you take off braid like that, surely you're going to lose distance in your cast. But I've done the exercise where I've casted with a full spool and a little bit emptier, and there's no difference in the distance you actually get on your cast. If you fill it to this mark, your distance is very, very similar. So it's not a thing about distance at all. It's just to prevent wind knots. Right guys, so the next step I'm going to do is go home, strip the spool, check my spacer washers, get the right washer in there, and make sure I get my line lay nice and straight. And then this reel's 100%, and I know for a fact I won't get wind knots again. Alright guys, so I'm going to put my lure on, and just for the sake of science, make a whole bunch of casts just to make sure and prove to you guys that I'm not going to get a wind knot now with the line lay as it is. Alright guys, so there we've done a whole bunch of casts. Even though my line lay is not 100% correct on this reel yet, just by taking off that extra braid, I haven't had one wind knot, and I actually casted right into the wind. I casted with the wind, I casted downwind, so tried all scenarios which could affect the braid, and not one wind knot. So just that little bit of braid we took off must have been 30 meters or so, and the reel's already casting 100 times better. Right guys, so that is my sort of experience with wind knots. I really hope it helps you guys out there. If you're battling with the wind knots, try these tips.